On the one hand, Dana White has to absolutely hate what happened on The Ultimate Fighter tonight, and judging by his body language and what he said, he was never more displeased with any decision in Ultimate Fighter history. On the other hand, it sure made for good hype because they started teasing it last week, they teased it again before this show, they teased it again to start this show. They billed it as the most controversial fight of the season. At this point, it's hard to imagine how anything else they do could be more controversial. So here's what happened. Ian Stevens from Team Edgar faced Roger Zapata from Team Penn. Ian was the first pick, Zapata was the last pick. There's what you need to know about these two fighters. Now, Stevens is a wrestler, and he was using his wrestling to take down Zapata over and over and over again. In fact, if I were scoring this fight, and I'm not a judge, I would have scored it 20-18 after 2 rounds and declared the fight to be over, and Stevens was the winner. However, the fact that they announced that it was going to a third round means that the judges saw it as 19-19 up to that point. Okay, fine, whatever. It's 19-19. We go to a third round. Now, earlier in the fight, Zapata had been given a couple of warnings for throwing 12-6 elbows when Stevens was going for those takedowns. Now, if he'd given 2 warnings and said, "This is your last warning," the next warning is not a warning, it's a point deduction. Dana White doesn't think so. He doesn't believe Mazzagatti gave a warning and said, "This is your final warning," but read my recap or rewatch the episode, you'll clearly hear Mazzagatti say, "I'm not going to tell you again." To me, that constitutes a final warning. So, when he throws the 12-6 elbow to the head and opens up Stevens in the third round, Mazzagatti immediately stops the fight and says, 1 point, and takes away a point, which means that there's no way at that point that there's any conceivable mathematical way. It's no chance in hell. It's absolutely impossible for Roger Zapata to win the fight at that point. The best he can do is get a 9-9 and get a draw. Otherwise, with Stevens wrestling him and taking him down over and over again, he loses the round 10-9, and with the 1 point deduction, he loses it 10-8. And if you assume it's 19-19 because it went to a third round, that means he won 29-27. Or again, at the very best, if you assume it's 19-19 and that third round ended 9-9 because somehow you scored it for Zapata, then it's 28-28. There's just no mathematical, it's not possible. But what happened, and what Dana White tells us when he explains it all to the fighters before the fight pick, is that 2 judges scored the fight, the sudden victory overtime round. They scored it a 9-9, and 1 judge scored it a 10-8. And since they didn't have a majority, they asked all 3 judges to circle the name of the fighter they thought won the fight on their scorecards. And they all circled Zapata. So go figure this one. Zapata, by all rights, lost this fight, got deducted a point, and still won. And Zapata is acting like a big shot backstage going, "Who's got whose blood on whose shirt? I'm wearing his blood, he's not wearing mine. Look at his face, look at my face. I won that fight, I'm not surprised." And then BJ Penn, just seconds later, goes, "I don't know. I honestly thought Ian Stevens was going to win that fight." So, his own coach didn't believe that Roger Zapata won. But he's going to take it, he's going to run with it, and he's going to pick the next fight anyway. And he picks Anton Berzin to face Pat Walsh. So that's next week's fight, and that's my recap of the quote-unquote most controversial fight of the season.